Welcome to Wit and Reason, hosted by psychologist Dr. Alexis Moreno. Dr. Moreno brings her expertise to providing smart and practical explanations on human behavior. Listen now as Dr. Moreno brings a little bit of positive mental health to your day.
Welcome to DC Radio. On today's show, we have my business and life partner, Alex Honigman, joining us.
Hey, everybody.
And we're going to be talking about the need for mental health coordination in the entertainment industry.
All right.
Yeah. We're going to nerd out about both of our specialties.
Yes.
Mental health, psychology, and
film and television.
Hell yeah.
All right.
So people always associate or tend to associate the entertainment industry, film, television, with glitz and glamour, red carpets, award shows, after parties.
Yep.
Multi-million-dollar budgets, and a whole lot more profits.
Yeah. It's glorified.
Yes, It's absolutely glorified. And that's, the industry just kind of does that, right?
Yeah.
They kind of do that for themselves.
Well, because it's got to be a marketing machine, right? You got to build that up.
Yeah, that's the brand of the industry, right?
For sure.
Glitz and glamour. The thing is that a lot of people overlook the fact that there are, for big projects, hundreds of people working, obviously not just on camera, but behind the scenes, toiling and sacrificing for this craft.
For these deadlines, for this intense and immense amount of pressure.
Yeah.
And for something that will then be scrutinized by people pretty brutally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, to the rest of us, we're just binging another show.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, hurry up, get us our next episode.
But there's so much involved.
And we kind of forget,
Yeah.
how much is involved. I mean, how many of you actually sit through the credits?
Ooh, yeah, that's it.
And not just sit through them.
True.
But read every single name and title, and even the credits, the credentials behind their name, and what it took to get those letters behind their name. Like, we have some masters, and I got this idea over here. The general population has somewhat of an understanding of what it takes for us to be able to do what we do. I don't really think a whole lot of people are very educated
as to like all the different
what it takes to actually work in the industry,
all the other things there. So I think it goes. We take it for granted, and we kind of miss out on some of those things. I mean, it used to be that credits were shorter, so they were actually the start of films, and that stopped over time because people didn't like it to sit there that long for the credits. And
I mean, that goes to tell you, like, that's how much work it takes.
Yes.
That's definitely how many people it takes to create what you're binging or what you're staring at your phone while streaming. And we're here today to talk about the human side, the very real human aspect of the entertainment industry.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this because I was watching I've been binging a ton of like different horror genre films. There's a bunch of great stuff out there, great content out there, wonderful stuff, and I will go through tons of it. And I think the thing is that I think of is like, how in doing all of this stuff, dealing with something that's intense and gripping and mortifying, and sometimes like very superstitious, because people bring their superstitions to things, like there's a lot of ways in which you're dealing with this content that's not even easy to process.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there like, as an actor, yes, that's your job, but you're like an actor or like a crew member. Like, how do you watch that stuff occur over and over again, like a brutal scene or murders or things like that, and not come away feeling a little something about it?
Yeah.
And then, it kind of went into for me, like how high pressure of an environment they're in to produce this stuff.
Oh, yeah. So when you think about mental health in the entertainment industry, there's so many aspects to that. It's very complex because you could look at the actors who are getting in the right mindset to play very challenging personas or characters. That's one piece of the psychology involved in the mental health impact involved. Then you have the crew, the cast and crew who are working within really tight deadlines and really long, exhausting, repetitive days.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself
does a lot.
Can be very distressing.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about even just if you want to get like industrial organizational psychology, IO psych about it. Even just the efficiencies or lack of efficiencies in what it takes to produce a film or a television episode, or even if you bring in like reality or like talk shows, or if you're working with current events, you know, like then you got to be able to pick up and switch and adapt immediately. So there are a lot of different types of challenges involved in the entertainment industry. And that's why my entire career, I've just been boggled about why aren't you using psychologists?
Yeah.
Or therapists, you know, like trained professionals, like this is what we do. This is like,
I mean,
you know, we help with all of these different aspects.
And so I love that as a thing that's happening is that mental health coordination is happening. It's showing up. And I mean, you can see it in the intimacy coordination. So those who don't know what intimacy coordination is, during sex or intimate scenes, doesn't have to be sex, but something in around intimacy or nudity, there are people who come in and kind of stage the scene and get things set to make sure that the talent feels safe and sound, the crew feel that they're appropriately ready for those things, that they don't have to do nudity that isn't necessary. Like, it makes it comfortable and safe, like you would at work, like, you know, like any other workplace. And so you make the place safe. And so intimacy coordination has a place in space because it has a specific thing in which people go, oh yeah, that does something to people.
Yeah, that's a little,
it's more tangible.
In some cases, it's a little more obvious.
Yeah.
And intimacy coordinator will review a script and still find intimate scenes that have been overlooked and need to be addressed. But just now they're starting to bring in mental health. Yep.
So mental health coordination is a really great process and great thing when you're analyzing the idea of what does it look to then have these people process and go through and feel better before, during, and after as a process. Like, could you imagine, like, at work, somebody going, hey, this is how things are going to go. Here's what to expect. What are your stressors like? What is this like? Go through it with you, like any good manager should or any good boss would. And then afterward, go, how do you feel about what you just did? And then move on with work. At work, that makes sense. Why aren't we doing this with, you know, so entertainment industry, mental health coordination, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so us at Win Reason, this is something that we've been pushing for, advocating for, networking with people about, like, hey, we're here, we're all about it, we're dedicated, tap us in, coach, you know. And so we've been fortunate enough to have some opportunities to be involved in productions, you know, to be on set, and even to help with post-production too, just kind of like reviewing, but either whether that's like debriefing or even just kind of reviewing what was done and making sure things, even if we're talking about mental health or human issues, making sure that it's represented in as healthy and accurate and fair way as possible too. You know, so there's a lot that we get to do.
Yeah. And I think like one of the things about, I always consider with the entertainment industry, we always hear about the tragedies after. We hear about the people who die of overdoses. We'd hear about the people who took on a role. I mean, I always think of Heath Ledger when he did The Dark Knight, and afterwards he was pretty messed up by playing the Joker, and he was not okay. And then he apparently had a cold, and then overdosed on a bunch of meds and just died.
Yeah.
And so, and it was like cold meds and some other things there, and he just died.
Yeah.
And brilliant actor, did brilliant things, and like yet, like the role and the other things kind of mixed together to take a toll on people. And I, you know, so you always kind of think about the way in which we process this, and I think there's a lot of room to grow when we look at these things, and room to kind of go, hey, look, this is afterwards. Like, let's not get into like the tragic parts of it. Let's talk about it now, so we're seeing the effects of it. So I think of the environment, I think of the time they spend on set doing those things, like the grueling amount of things there. And the other thing that I think about more recently is the amount of backlash people get via social media. I like the constant barrage. Like, God forbid you're like on a project that people love, like Star Wars or Star Trek or something.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Can you imagine the pressure?
Jeez. Yes, I can.
Fair. Yeah.
It's a lot. All right, so let's go ahead and just like list out the various reasons why mental health coordination.
Top reasons what? What are the things on set that are problematic?
Yeah, or in the entertainment industry as a whole. Doesn't
Sure.
We're talking pre-production, production on set, post-production.
That's a good point.
The whole deal, the whole shebang. Okay.
Shebang. I like it. All right, good. Give us a shebang.
So we alluded to the reality that the entertainment industry tends to be a pretty high pressure workplace environment.
Yeah, lots of pressure.
And that's not only just because you have lots of money on the line, even for indie films, even with a tight budget, that's still, you're working within really restricted funds. So whether you have a multi-million-dollar budget or just some thousands, it's still hard to work with.
And it's, well,
for different reasons, you know?
It may feel even more pressured because, like, you gotta work with what you got. And that's hard because, I mean, these are budding filmmakers who could be the next big, huge, amazing persons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the high pressure environment, money's involved.
Yeah.
Right? Then you have a big team of people together, even for the small ones. Mm-hmm. You have a group of people trying to work together. Remember those group projects in school? Mm-hmm. How fun was that?
Who loved group projects in school?
And then, hey, we're in the entertainment industry. Maybe we got some egos and some quirky personalities.
It is one of the only workplaces on Earth where you do not have, like, things like background checks or like mental health or like references checks. And interviews, resumes.
You do auditions.
You audition, but like you being able to do the work does not mean you're okay.
Yeah, or even behind the scenes, like maybe you work for a production company, you know, or you have a friend of a friend, and it's just all networking.
Yeah,
you know, so like sitting down for an interview, even as like a producer, rarely happens. It's just like, hey, we have this film, we need a producer. Come help us.
Yeah.
High pressure environments could also be like where you're working as well. So we talked about like being on set or being on location, which isn't necessarily always comfortable.
Yeah. And
you might be pulled away from your family or, you know, your people, your community, and you're just kind of like in lockdown, especially during quarantine. And in addition, if you just think about the high pressure that comes from performing.
Yeah.
You know, there's obvious, and we kind of talked about this, how actors need to perform, how they need to take on a role, and how they have to be that person repeatedly until everything aligns. The lighting, the sound, you know, the set. Yeah. Your performance, you got to keep on working it, delivering, and with a certain thing that only a director would have in mind, because the director is holding this vision and you're trying to meet their vision, but they can't always express exactly what that is. They're just looking for something, a feeling, and needing this particular type of thing. And so that's really, and hopefully you have a director who could communicate effectively communicate their internal vision to you, because if I say, I just want you to sparkle. Sparkle. What does that mean? Yes. Like, give me more. Tell me exactly what you need me to. More smiles, more teeth, more eyes, more tone of voice. Like, so I appreciate that. I appreciate the pressure. But I mean, think about it, even like the boom mic guy is sitting there holding this thing, and if a bee lands on his face or their face, like they better hold still, because if it ruins $1 million shot, there's just so much pressure. The performance anxiety, dude, even performance stunts fatigue, and explosions. Yeah, performance anxiety and fatigue everywhere. Stuff. Everywhere. Okay, yes. So when we're talking about performance, we're not just talking about the actors. We're talking about every single soul on that set. Yeah, and even has to perform. Those words, performance anxiety or performance fatigue, actually apply to anywhere within work, anywhere within like where you're asked to complete a task. Yeah, so even if we go outside the entertainment industry, you know, we could do a whole other show just on performance fatigue or performance anxiety and really dive into that, because whether you're a nurse, surgeon, therapist, you know, people typically apply that performance anxiety to the bedroom too. Intimacy, similar pressure. Yeah, wherever you have to perform, you know, masking up and going to family dinners and trying to hold your tongue. We gotta do a whole episode on just performance for people. Yes, we'll do that. So if we think about the entertainment industry and everything that's on the line, and the excellence that's required for everyone to perform regardless of what their duty is. Yeah. And the lack of patience or tolerance for poor performance, or for limited or lacking performance, or for feeling sick or ill, or... Yep, well... It's a lot. Which starts with that. Moving on to, like, number 2, think of as the irregular work schedules, right? So, like, number 1 is the
pressure and the performance. The other is irregular work schedules, and like you're supposed to be doing this at like 3 a.m. or 6 a.m. or 8 p.m. after a full day of whatever, and you're still supposed to give the exact same as you did earlier.
Yeah, we're talking 12-hour days.
Yeah, at least. And so
excellent performance. So you have the irregular work schedules, and then, dude, if you're traveling too, time zones.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then adjusting. So irregular work schedules really impact a person's mental health and psychological well-being. Next up, we talked about this public scrutiny.
Yep.
And the beautiful invention of social media.
Yeah, wonderful invention of social media.
Back in the day, we go to the theater, or, Blockbuster, we watch our films privately, and then we discuss it privately, and, we may be yay or nay.
There may be a film critic that tears you apart, but like...
Yeah, in the newspapers or magazines.
But it's limited. It would be like, which newspaper? Well, maybe you don't get it, so it doesn't really matter.
And then only people who are like, really invested.
Yeah.
But now you have the whole world.
And so everyone's scrutinizing this thing, and then there's so much fandom around various things. So like, I think of like anyone who works with the Marvel universe, or like I said, Star Wars or Star Trek, or anything that has like a fan base, like any nerd, especially any nerds, fellow nerds out there, gotta be kind. But when you think about like even just Daisy Ridley had discussed, she was the person in Star Wars, if you hadn't seen it, who plays a main character named Rey, and the amount of weight on their shoulders to then perform. I mean, they reported having stomach issues and holes in it, like ulcerations.
Severe anxiety following working on that production.
Yeah.
Performing for you all.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot that goes into it. So you also have the public scrutiny and social media. And even working with performers, some actors do such a good job at performing the villain. When they're out there in the real world, they're being publicly, in person, real life, being scrutinized and trolled on social media.
Or because
they did a good job performing and everyone believed it. Now they hate them.
I was thinking of the daytime television people who are the soaps, and the soap the community is so wonderful, but they get so invested that they come up and they slap the person for sleeping and you're like, what are you doing? Stop.
Exactly. So I mean, public
that's
scrutiny.
a pretty good example.
Yes, and that's a very real thing that people then have to work through. I am not used to being hated, and that's not even me. I was just performing. So that's another thing that people need to be able to process after. Something that is discussed more in the news are issues around substance abuse as well in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, we talked about the overdoses and the pressures that lead to there's pressures that lead to these things, or you actually don't even know, could they have these underlying substance abuse problems beforehand or after or during or whatever else.
Was this happening beforehand, or, was this developed as a coping mechanism to get through all of these pressures?
And there's so many people affected by this thing.
Yeah. So that's another area where mental health professionals are properly trained to help people work through those types of challenges. Another thing that people don't realize while working in the entertainment industry, in front of the scene or behind, is the isolation and loneliness that's a part of this field of work. Now, we talk about, yes, they're big group projects. That's not necessarily your friends and family.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily feel comfortable enough to be your true best self. You might have to be masking the entire time. Yeah.
And I always think of regardless of, a lot of times you can't talk about what you're doing with your friends and family anyway, because of NDAs and everything else. I mean, DC, all about this. There's an amount of isolation in what you do, and you find camaraderie around the people that you can, but you also can't always trust that because you're also working with them in a certain capacity.
Yeah.
So there is this weird, version of, how much self-disclosure, how much can you talk about yourself versus not, because you may be working with these people later. I mean, I think that's one of the things that when I think of, since being in DC, coming from LA, this is one of the corollaries I've seen between the two that are very obvious to me.
Yeah.
It's a small world and everyone knows each other and you have to, so it feels a little isolative.
Yeah. Absolutely. And especially if you have some kind of crisis or trauma or assault.
Well,
you don't know who you, unfortunately, still at this point, a lot of people don't know who they could talk to and trust when reporting that kind of stuff. And that in it of itself can be very isolating.
True, which kind of leads us to a nice idea, like the stigma in around mental health in general, right? Yeah. So people are typically not open about mental health stigma, period, like in their lives anyway. And then if you're performing a 10 to 12 hour day, I remember Catherine Zeta-Jones came out about being bipolar, I believe. I want to say bipolar. But they came out and they were very open about this. And it was very hard to disclose this because then people judged how she would then perform on set.
Yeah.
From there on out, which doesn't make any sense.
People start thinking, money signs. Like, is this
a liability?
Yeah. And even when we, even for us, when we're pitching, let's bring mental health, let's bring psychologists, into this industry, into your production, we get some pushback.
Yeah.
Some of it's like, well, if we ask too many questions, that could be a liability for us. So we have to still work through that type of stigma.
Mindset, yeah. And I mean, the thing is, the liability is how you're working. People are not a liability. Just because somebody has something going on with them. If you just create a safer space for it, you have almost no liability. You've minimized the risk.
Yeah.
But they don't see these things because it's reactive, not proactive.
Still.
And when it comes to mental health, in all facets, in all parts of life, we need to move towards proactive, integrated mental health versus reactive. There's a problem, you're a problem. There, put them away, hide them away. Not in my backyard. Cancel these things.
Yeah, let's start from scratch.
Yep, it's tough. And with that in mind, then the next part is if you then disclose these things, there's already amount of uncertainty in the industry.
Yeah.
And so another big one is career uncertainty.
Yep.
I think that for me terrifies me because, can you imagine not getting a paycheck, not having a next job, that somebody didn't like your performance, so you will not be hired for something else. That's scary.
Yeah. It's a very risky industry to try to work in. It's very unstable. Even when you hear a success story, like this person got a big gig and they're working on a multi-million-dollar film or they have a series, that doesn't necessarily mean it lasts forever.
And then on top of that, you get people who end up being...
You gotta save that stuff.
Well, you get people who get typecast or stuck in a role that they didn't want to be in for a really long period of time. I think we recently lost Matthew Perry, and who was really working on his, after addiction and his mental health stuff, was really working on things. In fact, I think what they noticed was he had ketamine in his system from doing ketamine-assisted therapy, but his heart couldn't take it from all the previous drug use.
Right.
And so you even think about this, even trying to get healthy from all of the mistakes you've made, from all the tolls that it took and all the different things there, still takes a toll.
Yeah. And so all of that, obviously, all of that uncertainty can exacerbate depression. And it can be tied to self-worth. Plus the very real financial burden.
Oh, yeah.
How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to live?
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about crew.
Yep.
And so that's why there's been a whole lot of strikes. Because because the career uncertainty is already a very harsh reality. So if and when you get a job, you want to make sure that you're being paid properly, given all of these other circumstances involved.
And part of that transient nature of things, there's always new people trying to step up. There's always new things. And again, DC and LA, you have a lot in common with each other because you have that same type of pattern where you watch kind of people who have been around for a bit get phased out to other areas. Hopefully they find meaningful, wonderful things with what they're doing. Yeah. But that's really tough. It's a really rough place to be when you're looking at that longevity in career and uncertainty around that. It's hard.
Yeah. And we totally get it. Both coming from LA and being raised up in and adjacent to the entertainment industry and Hollywood. And that's why it's always been my passion, to be as involved in helping this industry with all of its just beautiful, inspirational creativity be something that people can do in a healthy way where they don't have to sacrifice themselves and their well-being in order to create for us, to entertain the world, to bring joy and intrigue to all of us.
So what does it look like in practice? In mental health in practice, on set or in production or anything else, what does it look like in practice?
Well, you know the answer.
I know the answer, but I'm asking you because I want
you do this with me.
Yes, I know, but that's the important part. Like, when it comes to it, what do you do? Because therapy, mental health is in the doing. It's not just in around talking about it.
Yeah.
So I always think of this as like it's an active practice. So you show up on set. People, therapists read through scripts, understand what content is triggering for different people. They have debriefings, pre-production. Hey everybody, how you feeling? How you doing? Whatever else it is. It doesn't take a lot.
Mm-hmm. Even looking at schedules, you know, like, okay, how is this schedule supposed to flow? Do we have enough wiggle room? Are there enough breaks? Is this doable? Yeah. Because we're working with human beings here, not robots. We need bathroom breaks. We need time to prepare. We need time to transition.
Well, then you go through
Let's be realistic here.
Yeah, and then you go through shot lists and things like that. Like, so what are you shooting at one given time? Yeah. What does that look like? If you doing super heavy content, one after another, can you make this lighter? Can you then account for things that need transition? Yeah. And then the idea is like, how do you then allow space to debrief and be like, man, that hurt, or that hurt my brain, or that hurt my soul, or that hurt me in some way watching this thing happen on set. Yeah. Or if there's even just flare-ups of people's other personalities and how they're dealing with one another. Yeah. We also then mitigate personality on set. That's what I wanted to conflict.
I entered at the Dr. Phil show, and part of my job was the guest management and keeping guests away from one another. Yep. Until they got in front of the camera, which is a whole other issue of exploitation.
And we say ethics.
But yeah, working through the personalities as well, and making sure that everyone feels safe,
seen, heard, understood.
Yeah. So people find us mostly through word of mouth, through good referrals.
Some actors request.
Yeah. So actors would make requests like, hey, sure, I'll do this film, but part of the requirement is, we want mental health on set. Yeah. We want this extra support. Executive producers help make those decisions as well and make sure that mental health is part of the freaking budget. Yeah. That's a consideration up front, not reactive.
Yeah. You have a medic on set. You might as well have somebody else there for anything else you cannot see that takes a toll that may be longer than just stubbing a toe or getting a cut, right? Or spraining or breaking an arm even.
And so that's another thing that we do is that not only do we also provide mental health first aid on set, just like part of your safety team, just like your medic, but I'm also certified to train people to become mental health first aid certified. Super. Yep. And so we can't necessarily be everywhere all of the time. Yeah. But what we can do is we could also train other people that could be anyone. They don't have to be mental health professionals. We're training producers. We're training,
production assistants and other people. Yeah.
We're training intimacy coordinators. Like we're training even the teachers on set. Yep. As many people as we could get on the same page in assessing and understanding, like, what is a mental health concern, crisis? Yep. How do I effectively intervene? How do we talk about this kind of stuff? Particularly in such a sensitive environment like the entertainment industry, where there still is stigma and contracts and budgets and, all these other realities, timeframes. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun.
It's an amazing thing. It's so open to more possibility, to changing the way we work. And it should, that's the thing. If we could do it there, you could do it anywhere.
Honestly, I might even feel comfortable enough to say, like, the only mental health practice that is pursuing media, entertainment industry mental health. You have a few clinicians here and there that have kind of fallen into it.
Dabbled in it, yeah.
Just because they happen to know somebody who needed some help and they volunteered. But we're the only practice who's really pushing this.
Traveling to do it.
And pioneering mental health in the entertainment industry. And that comes with pros and cons and challenges because we have to sell it.
Yep.
sell this concept that like, hey, prevention works. We can all be healthier and help. And
hey, if we did a
happier.
good job, you won't know that we ever did anything.
Yeah.
Except people may be happier.
Yeah.
Like if we did a satisfaction rating.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh no.
So stay posted on witandreason.com. You can follow us on all of the social medias ever, except for Twitter/X. We got off that one because nonsense. At Wit and Reason. I was very happy to cancel that account. And let's keep the conversation going.